Here we have two linear switches, both made by JWK, both with nylon top housings, both with nylon bottom housings, and both with palm stems. This one, the JWick Black, costs 30 cents per switch, while this one, the Durock Lavender, costs 65 cents per switch. What gives? Do you really get more than twice the value out of the lavenders than the blacks? Let's find out. We've already established the similarities between these two switches, so let's talk about the differences. The biggest one is the spring. The blacks have 58.5 gram springs that measure about 14 millimeters, while the lavenders have 65 gram springs that measure about 13 millimeters. The latter springs are also gold-plated, but as far as I can tell, that makes no difference. I initially thought that the stem poles of the lavenders were slightly thicker, but when I took a photo and measured the poles to verify, it turns out they're pretty much the same thickness. Black is slimming, I guess. The color is also different. We might be able to dismiss this as purely aesthetic, but the fact that the lavender's housing is transparent might point to a difference in the composition of the plastic used in it. Maybe one switch has some other plastic mixed in with the nylon? I'm not at all knowledgeable on this kind of thing, so this is just speculation. If you have further information on this, please let us know in the comments. Both switches exhibit a very minimal stem and housing wobble. The housing wobble causes these little ticking or snapping noises when you move the stem or top housing around. Wobble, whether stem or housing, is one of those things that I haven't really quite understood the significance of. Of course, I can definitely see and hear it on an individual switch, but I have yet to experience its effect during normal use. I filmed both switches with 0.15mm TX films, and this did eliminate the top housing noises. Here's a comparison of filmed and unfilmed for both switches. What did you think? Hear a difference? To my ears, there is none. If there is, then it's so minute that in my view, the cost and effort of filming is just not worth it. And this has largely been my experience with films regardless of the switch. I'll film switches because people say that you should, but I don't really perceive a difference. This is something that I'd like to explore in further detail, perhaps in a future video, so feel free to chime in with your thoughts and experiences with films in the comments below. The lavenders come pre-lubed from the factory. For the blacks, it seems to differ depending on where you buy them. Mine were not factory lubed, so I couldn't compare them stock. I lubed both switches in the same way. Krytox 205 grade 0 on the bottom housing / stem using a brush, and bag lubing the springs with Krytox 105. I did not clean off the factory lubing from the lavenders, I just brushed right on top of it with 205. As can be expected from JWK switches, both are very smooth once lubed. I wasn't able to perceive a smoothness advantage for one switch over the other. Sound is where we finally see a big difference between these two switches. Let's take a quick listen to them head to head on two different keyboards. I first tried the blacks on the KBD67 Lite and the lavenders on the Ikki68 Aurora. I find the Ikki to be a more muted board than the Lite, and so the lavenders sounded really unappealing to me there. Just way too quiet for my liking. The blacks, on the other hand, sounded a bit too loud on the light. It kind of reminded me of the sound of the Durock Palms. Those are very loud, clacky switches. I used to like them a lot, but now I can't really stand using them for very long. They're just so loud, clacky, and sort of sharp sounding. The blacks aren't as loud, and they do have a deeper sound, but it was still kind of a shock to me. The blacks sounded much better on the Ikki. The board muted their sound enough for them to be just the right amount of loud. The Lavenders on the Lite were still too muted for my liking. This is very much a personal preference though. Some of you may prefer a more muted sounding switch. So, what's the verdict? For me, it's a no-brainer win for the JWick Blacks. They're just as smooth as the Durock Lavenders, while also having a sound that's much more appealing at less than half the cost. Of course, like I said, this is down to personal preference. You might prefer the more muted sound of the Lavenders, but is that worth paying more than twice the price? Here in the Philippines, the price difference is even greater. The Blacks can be had for as low as 26 cents per switch, while the Lavenders are stupidly overpriced at 79 cents per switch. That's more than 3 times more expensive. JWK has taken the mechanical keyboard hobby by storm lately with their buttery, smooth switch offerings. There is an abundance of choice out there, but a significant portion of it is just recolors of the same polycarbonate top, nylon bottom, palm stem switch with different springs. I tend to avoid these kinds of switches like alpacas, mauves, halo-halos, because I find their material composition results in a sound that's too high-pitched and thin for my preference, especially toward the top out. All nylon housing switches are beloved by many in the hobby, including me, for their pleasant, deep sound profile. Cherry MX Blacks are probably the most well-known of these switches. The latest Hyperglide version sounds very similar to the JWick Blacks, but with a slightly lower pitched sound and more significant scratch. My favorite switch so far is the Gateron Black Ink. It just sounds so satisfying, and it's the right amount of loud, sitting in between the Durock Lavenders and JWick Blacks. These are endgame worthy switches, and their price reflects that. What do you think about these all-nylon JWK switches? Which one do you think sounds better? Would you buy them? Have you already? How have they been for you? Please let us know in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, entertaining, informative, or any other positive adjective, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. We'll end with some extended sound tests of both switches. If you'd like to help the channel survive, please stay until the end of those. Thank you so much for watching.